Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into one of the most absolute, bone-chilling, and, frankly, legendary survival stories in human history, the Endurance Expedition. We're going to see exactly how this crew clawed their way back from the literal brink of death. But before we get into the thick of it, I want you to ask yourself a serious question. Could you survive 2 whole years in negative 50 degrees Celsius with zero modern tech? Just imagine it. You're stuck on the deadliest continent on Earth. No GPS, no radio, and absolutely zero hope of an outside rescue. Okay, let's jump right into part 1, Trapped in the Ice. We'll look at how a monumentally ambitious mission turned into an absolute nightmare before they even touched land. So check out the sheer scale of this 1914 plan. You've got Sir Ernest Shackleton commanding 27 crewmen, plus 1 stowaway, so 28 guys in total. The goal? To be the very first to cross Antarctica on foot. That's a 2,900-kilometer trek they figured would take about 120 days. But here's the kicker. When they hit South Georgia Island, the locals warned them. They said the ice was unusually heavy. But Shackleton? Well, he ignored the warnings and pushed forward anyway. Looking at the timeline, you can see how fast things went south. They leave Britain in August 1914. By November 5th, they have their last human contact at South Georgia. Exactly a month later, December 5th, they're pushing into some seriously heavy ice in the Weddell Sea. And then, January 18, 1915, the Endurance gets completely, hopelessly stuck. Their momentum is just dead. They're trapped, drifting away from their landing point, and plunging straight into 24 hours of winter darkness. Which brings us to Section 2. The ship goes down. Now, what's really terrifying about this next phase is the realization that the ice wasn't just holding them anymore. It was actively crushing them. 9 months. Think about that. That's not just a timeline. That is 9 months of crushing psychological weight, just sitting in a frozen ship, waiting for the inevitable. And finally, in October 1915, the massive pressure of the ice just shattered the hull of the Endurance, and freezing water started pouring in. You can really feel the despair in the words of crew member Tom McLeod, who said, "I don't think we'll ever see our homes again." I mean, the ship is literally flooding. The guys spent 3 agonizing days pumping water, trying to save her, but it was useless. Shackleton finally had to make the call to abandon the Endurance. So now they're living on a drifting ice floe, what they called ocean camp. The logistics here are just brutal. Every man was allowed a maximum of 2 pounds of personal gear. That's it. The photographer, Frank Hurley, was only allowed to save 150 out of his 400 photo negatives. They're surviving solely on penguin and seal meat. But here's where Shackleton's leadership really kicks in. He strictly rationed everything, but he actually lied to the men about how much food they had left just to keep their morale from completely collapsing. And to give you a sense of just how desperate the food situation was, get a load of this. Shackleton goes up to the 18-year-old stowaway, Blackborough, and tells him, "If we run out of food, you'll be the first one eaten." It's kind of dark, right? But it perfectly captures the absolute terrifying reality of their situation. All right, Section 3, Escape to Elephant Island. By April 1916, the ice they were camped on actually started breaking apart under their feet. They had absolutely no choice but to drop 3 tiny lifeboats into the freezing, lethal waters. Before they even got fully underway, there was this visceral moment. Fireman Ernie Holness falls straight into the freezing water. The crew manages to drag him out onto a cracking block of ice, but here's the problem. They can't build a fire. So Shackleton orders him to just walk back and forth all night long until his own body heat dried his clothes. In an environment like this, one single mistake meant death. So they had to rely on extreme, on-the-fly problem-solving. 497 days, that's how long it had been. Finally, on April 15, 1916, these guys stepped foot on actual solid ground, Elephant Island, after 497 agonizing days stuck on either a boat or drifting ice. You can practically feel the sheer, exhausting relief of that moment. But the relief didn't last. Section 4, The Impossible Boat Journey. Elephant Island was completely uninhabited, off the grid. No one was coming for them. So surviving meant undertaking what is arguably one of the most reckless, insane boat journeys in all of human history. I mean, how do you cross the deadliest ocean on Earth in a modified 22-foot rowboat? We're talking about the Drake Passage. It's notorious for 12-meter high waves. It swallowed around 800 ships whole. and even modern vessels struggle here. Shackleton and 5 other men set out to cross 1,300 kilometers to South Georgia Island, and the 16-day conditions were horrific. 6 men rowing in grueling 4-hour shifts. To get drinking water, they literally had to melt ice against their own bodies. There was so little space, they had to lie flat just to eat their raw meals. And navigation? They had to use a sextant during the fleeting tiny minutes of actual sunlight. Just brutal. Against all logical odds, they made it. Section 5. The uncharted mountain crossing. They hit South Georgia, but a massive hurricane forced them to land on the completely wrong side of the island. The whaling station was all the way on the other side. So now they are faced with 2 impossible choices. Option A, sail 130 miles back out onto that deadly ocean in a boat that is practically shattered. Or, option B, walk 29 miles on foot across completely unmapped 10,000-foot freezing mountains. Oh, and by the way, no human had ever crossed the interior of this island before. Their boat was trashed, so they chose the mountains. Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean left their sleeping bags behind to save weight, tied themselves together with a rope, and climbed for 36 straight hours. They literally had to cut stairs into the ice with an axe as they went. It's a masterclass in sheer willpower. And finally, utterly exhausted, they stumbled into the Stromness whaling station. Which brings us to our final act, Section 6, a miraculous rescue. You'd think the explainer is over since they made contact, right? Not even close. There were still 22 men starving and freezing to death back on Elephant Island. The psychological resilience of the guys left behind is just heartbreaking. Frank Wild was left in charge, and every single morning he'd wake the men up and say, "Pack your bags, boys, the boss might come today," every single day. But the reality of that wait was grim. They survived there for 128 days. They lived huddled underneath 2 upside-down rowboats. They sustained themselves entirely on penguin and seal meat. And the cold was so bad that young Blackbarrow's frostbitten toes actually had to be amputated to stop the infection. The physical and mental toll as the months dragged on, it's unimaginable. But then, on August 30th, 1916, a miracle. And it all comes down to this number, 28. After 3 failed attempts, Shackleton finally broke through the ice on a Chilean ship called the Yelcho. And the miraculous final tally? All 27 crewmen, plus the one stowaway. All 28 men survived. And just to tie this incredible epic to the modern day, 106 years later, in 2022, underwater investigators actually found the sunken Endurance. It's sitting 10,000 feet deep in the Weddell Sea, perfectly preserved by those freezing waters. It's this haunting, beautiful monument to everything they endured. So, I'm going to leave you with this. What impossible odds could you overcome with pure willpower, unyielding leadership, and unbreakable teamwork? The Endurance expedition wasn't just a failed mission. It is the ultimate testament to human resilience. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it blew your mind as much as it did mine. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.